Whew, that was an experience. The new movie Fall is hitting theaters, but with a premise that we've seen before. So is it worth the price of admission? For best friends Becky and Hunter, life is all about conquering fears and pushing limits. But after they climb 2,000 feet to the top of a remote, abandoned radio tower, they find themselves stranded with no way down. Now their expert climbing skills will be put to the ultimate test. So this is in the vein of 47 Meters Down, The Shallows, and Frozen. Well, that ski lift movie, not the overhyped Disney flick. But each of those has a minimal cast with a lonely and isolated premise where survival seems almost impossible for the characters. The opening sequence of this is pretty rough with a green screen effect that's very obvious. But you don't have to worry because after that, all of the footage looks really believable and you won't be broken out of the narrative by some just fake looking high altitude stunts. This features a sparse cast, with really our main two protagonists driving the story. We follow Becky and Hunter, two great friends, who for some reason have this love of climbing up things that they probably shouldn't be climbing, so that they can get the adrenaline rush. Now, personally, I'd just rather drink a few espressos, be on my way, but whatever. Now, they decide to climb up this massive tower out in the middle of nowhere, and as they reach the top, calamity happens, and then they're stuck. So if you've not seen the trailer, I say keep avoiding it because it does tend to give away a lot, even if some of the scenes are very predictable. I was way more invested in this than I thought I would be, and as a result, I was a bit achy in my shoulders from the tension and the anxiety that came from watching. Now, even if you're not afraid of heights, this has some wonderful moments that are designed to make you squirm and hold your breath. Now, I squealed once just because the pressure continued to mount, and this happened even though the storyline is filled with obviousness. Now, the fact that it could still keep my butt puckered and sweating despite me being able to predict how this is all going to play out, I think it's a good thing. But this also did manage to include one surprise for me, which I appreciated and then enjoyed. Now, the story has to maintain a balancing act of engaging dialogue and believable risky action to sustain its hour and 47-minute runtime, and I think it manages it pretty well. The dynamic between the two friends is not unexpected, and there are some things that just come about as part of their discussions that I think are foreseeable, but there was still enough weight to their relationship that makes it easy to watch. The story is designed to make Becky more sympathetic than Hunter, with Hunter at times being just a selfish friend, even though she comes across as trying to help. Now, there's also some conflict between the two, and that works to up the ante of uneasiness because they have to share this tiny platform stupid high up in the air and then rely on each other for survival. Now, I find it crazy that Hunter decided to wear her Chuck Taylors to go climbing rather than specialized shoes designed for that sport. Now, I think it helps to reinforce the carefree and daring spirit that the character shows herself to be. Her behavior and mindset contrast nicely with Becky's more reserved and cautious way of thinking. Now, we know she's not always been that way from the examples that were shown, but in her present state, Becky is way more reasonable when it comes to risk, creating some good story tension between the two. The camera work is surprisingly amazing and how engaging it is. Now, I was sucked into the peril that our characters faced because we get shots that are from far away, which gives this nerve-wracking scale to the whole surroundings, but then we also get to see them on the platform from a ton of different angles. Sometimes we're looking straight on at them, other times we're looking down from above, which, by the way, that's a terrifying view. Now, there are some conveniences built into this story that allow our characters to accomplish things or survive instances that they probably shouldn't, but I never found them to be so ridiculous that they broke me out of the scene. Now, in addition to the sheer heights that our characters have to deal with, the isolation and hopelessness of their situation helped to create a sense of dread, which again kept me riveted but also very nervous. Now, the thought that one slight wrong move or even very strong wind could toss him off the structure, I found very terrifying. I mean, seriously, my chest was a bit tight from how I was clenched up while watching. Now, the story includes enough sequences where the characters dangle to just make me gasp and then want to yell at them to be more careful. Now, Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Mason Gooding are also in this, but they're in it for so little and don't contribute much to the story that their characters really could have been played by anybody. I mean, it's not like I didn't like them in the roles, but there's just not much for them to do here. Now, I think the film balances the pace pretty well in this, especially when having characters stuck on something could become very monotonous. The story gives us some actions that make our palms sweaty, mom spaghetti, but then calms down a bit for some dialogue and to bring our heart rate back down. And then it repeats with some harrowing sequence followed by a rest period. I mean, yeah, it is a little bit repetitive, but there's also enough variation and story complications to keep each segment from feeling exactly like the previous one. Now, the ending comes about fairly abruptly and then gives us a resolution with actually showing us certain elements. Now, after all of the time spent with anxious anticipation, to have this conclude the way it does just makes me feel a bit cheated. And strangely, the opening sequence of the film is also resolved without showing us anything. So it seems to be kind of a trend within the writing to not actually have to figure out how to finish up the scene. Aside from the opening bad effects, the quick wrap-up ending was the weakest portion of this film. Now, I don't need or even want drawn-out exposition or drama, but the convenient way out just feels meh. So overall, Fall is a taut, tense thriller that excels in delivering anxiety-filled sequences wrought with peril. The cinematography is convincing and helps to put us in danger with the characters. And while there are story conveniences present, thankfully these typically aren't so ridiculous that they become laughable and break us out of the narrative. The pacing is effective at maintaining an engaging storyline, alternating between the extreme risk of the tower and the quieter conversations between friends. And I wish the ending wouldn't have been so quickly wrapped up, instead continuing with the tension all the way to the conclusion. Now, I still do question Hunter's shoe choice though. I mean, I love Chucks and I have many pairs myself, but if I were to go climbing, I'd probably pick something a little bit more suitable. But seriously, I mean, I'm not going climbing. There's nothing about that even looks intriguing or enjoyable. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and some very gnarly violence. I give Fall 3.5 out of 5 couches. So it's a thriller that you enjoy. Do you have any that thrive on isolation as their main point of conflict? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.